Hi, welcome to Roy's Book Reviews. I am shooting this video not long before Halloween, hence this cool hat that I'm wearing. And today I want to share my thoughts with you about a work of nonfiction, a book entitled Killers of the Flower Moon. If that title rings a bell, no doubt it's due to the movie adaptation. It's going to be in theaters probably by the time this video drops. It may already be in theaters, I'm not sure. And it is being hyped big time. It must have a huge marketing budget since every time I go online, regardless of what social media site I happen to check out, I'm always finding clips and advertisements and plenty of hype and positive reviews about this movie. I assume that they are pushing it for Oscar nomination season. Before getting into the movie, I thought I would read the book by David Grann, and now I am going to share my thoughts on what went down. Killers of the Flower Moon, the Osage Murders, and the Birth of the FBI is the true story of horrific one-by-one genocide of Native Americans in the United States of America. As I mentioned, this book came to my attention due to the movie adaptation, which is directed by the legendary Martin Scorsese and features Hollywood heavyweights such as Leonardo DiCaprio and Robert De Niro, to name just a couple of them. So advance notification that the movie is a superb must-see event was unsurprising. Rather than waiting for the film to drop, since the subject matter piqued my interest in a big way, I decided to read David Grann's book. Killers of the Flower Moon describes a period which came to be known as the Reign of Terror, during which countless members of a Native American tribe named the Osage came to be murdered. The word countless is used literally here because so much covering up took place, so little follow-up in pursuit of justice occurred, and so much sweeping lives under the rug that were deemed to be inconsequential happened, that it's impossible to know with full certainty how many people were murdered, who the killers in each instance were, and who else was involved to make certain that killings went unresolved. What led to the murder spree was that the Osage were involuntarily relocated to an area of Oklahoma by American whites who were greedily gobbling up the country until they owned it in its entirety. Turns out that they pushed the Osage onto land with plenty of oil later discovered beneath its soil. So instead of gentrifying the Osage into a ghetto, the Osage were made extremely wealthy. This turn of events being unacceptable to greedy American whites with insufficient moral compass to curb their willingness to kill for money, and because the American government refused to acknowledge the Osage as citizens who deserved the same rights as everyone else, or to at least view them as fellow human beings who deserved to be treated with humanity, a system was set up in which ownership of oil-rich land could easily be transferred from Osage to white hands. Only deaths were required to make this happen, and willingness to kill Osage people was not in short supply. Much of the narrative centers on a particular villain responsible for multiple murders, a man named William Hale. He could only get what he wanted with agreement and participation from another white man, Ernest Burkhart, who had married an Osage woman named Molly. The FBI was a brand new organization at the time, looking to establish a foothold towards permanence as an American institution, headed by J. Edgar Hoover. The man with boots to the ground who investigated this string of murders in Osage country was Tom White. White did not fully fit the profile that Hoover was looking for in an FBI agent. However, this particular case did not require a suit and office type, but a frontier cowboy. Securing criminal convictions, even with abundance of evidence on hand, was no easy feat when operating in a justice system built to protect certain privileged people and view others as disposable. But Ernest Burkhart eventually developed enough of a conscience to confess his crimes. And this enabled successful conviction of William Hale as well. I believe this is the portion of the story that the movie adaptation focuses on. That's understandable because it features clear-cut lead characters, heroes as well as villains, to focus on. But David Grann's book does not stop there. He continues to investigate and comes to learn that the Reign of Terror took place over a much longer span of time than had been thought, and involved considerably more people than William Hale and those in his orbit. There were many more victims, more killers, more enablers, more conspiracy to defraud, more covering up awful deeds so well that justice could never be served, and descendants can never receive full closure. Now, here in 2023, we live in this strange time when censorship and book banning are having a revival due to the efforts of intolerant people on the political right. That's one name for them anyway. Bigots is another. They are against books which focus on marginalized people and point the finger of accusation at those who oppress, which of course is simply continuation of the oppression by method of suppression. If kids don't grow up learning about the horrors of slavery and Jim Crow and homophobia and various other institutionalized forms of intolerance, then the American past is whitewashed and everything is hunky-dory. Or so they seem to believe. To quote one of my favorite memes taken from a TV commercial, that's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. Yet people keep trying, and they have made significant headway in the dumbing down of a nation. With this as backdrop, somehow a story like Killers of the Flower Moon manages to find the spotlight. If you are among those who feels that Columbus Day should be eliminated and replaced outright with Indigenous Peoples Day, wait until the exhaustive research of David Grann comes to your attention. If you thought that the worst white Americans did to Native Americans, after all that initial slaughtering, was confining them to tiny sections of this country to still call their own, and perhaps have a casino on, wait until you find out that the slaughter continued on a less grand scale for many more years. First the land is taken, then what lies beneath. Along with the riches generated by the black gold we call oil, what also lies beneath is stated in the book's final paragraph. Words spoken by the ancestor of a likely victim whose killer was never brought to justice. Mary Jo Webb says, "This land is saturated with blood." Then she repeated what God told Cain after he killed Abel. "The blood cries out from the ground." I look forward to watching the movie version of this story, even though I suspect that it will tell only a part of the story. Perhaps it will make awful people seem more redeemable than they were. Maybe too much focus will be placed on bad people who perpetrated horrors at the expense of honoring the innocent who were steamrolled. But even if imperfectly told to conform to Hollywood's parameters, what's more important is that greater exposure of hidden atrocities will result. Some people, like myself, will dig deeper than just watching a star-studded movie and read the book. Others will dig deeper still, find additional books and research, learn more and more about the evil that men did and continue to do in the process of building this extremely flawed, hypocrisy-laden nation. You know what they say about those who do not learn / ignore / reject the truth of history. They doom us all. There's nothing exclusively American history about taking lives to claim land, of course. Just turn on the news to see what's going on in Ukraine or Israel and thereabouts. As a reading experience, I found myself a little less absorbed in the narrative of Killers of the Flower Moon, despite its high body count and other fascinating elements of the story, than I have been with other true crime books. That is because Grann keeps a certain distance from the proceedings. He makes minimal effort to mimic the qualities of an engrossing novel, probably because of the broadness of scope. The fewer people and locations involved, the more intimately a story can be told. Dozens of principal players means less of a microscopic lens on anyone in particular. So I was somewhat less invested than was the case when I've read books such as Truman Capote's In Cold Blood or Eric Larson's The Devil in the White City. But that doesn't prevent me from giving Killers of the Flower Moon by David Grann an enthusiastic recommendation. It's my understanding that they are making a movie from another one of his books soon. So I'm sure that will also be very interesting subject matter that I will be quite curious to check out. Perhaps I will read that book in advance of seeing the movie as well. Seems I'll have plenty of time if they haven't started filming yet. Anyway, that's all I have to say about this wonderful book that I highly recommend. Until next time, this is Roy of Roy's Book Reviews saying happy reading.